overturned the sentence. Things have been quiet. These few supporters out here you can see embracing each other. Not much has been said, and nothing to the media actually, but among themselves, just sort of keeping calm and not saying much. Very solemn out here.
All right, Alex, we'll stand by with you. Just kind of maintain there, and we'll of course come right back to you as she walks out, if she comes from that spot. Eric, I want to ask you, as I'm reading the things, some of the judge saying some of the talking points, speaking to his thoroughness, he said he had received hundreds of letters on the behalf of the Congresswoman, and read every single one of them. Not surprising to you?
It's a little bit surprising of the number. I mean,
sure.
It's not every day that you have 100 character letters be submitted on your behalf. Usually it's a handful, and the number of witnesses who also testified in her behalf, the judge was obviously impressed with him as well, because he notes in the sentencing order that he definitely recognized the long history of service and the good deeds, whether it was helping veterans or helping people attend college. And that he recognized that all of those things are deserving of consideration. And then he balances that by saying, obviously, that he also has to impose a sentence that recognizes the seriousness of the offense. And he details the steps that she took to defraud the donors to that organization.
And we do have a statement that's just come in from the FBI in Jacksonville, the special agent in charge. He released a statement regarding the sentencing about Corrine Brown, Ronnie Simmons, and Carla Wiley, and here's part of it right now. Quote, "It is incredibly disappointing that an elected official who took an oath after year to serve others would exploit the needs of children and abuse the charitable hearts of constituents to advance her own personal and political agendas and deliver them with virtually nothing." It goes on to say, quote, "It is an exceptionally difficult task, but rooting out public corruption is a priority for which the FBI will continue to dedicate the resources necessary to investigate, because the impact on everyday people is real. We thank our law enforcement partners at the IRS-CI and U.S. Attorney's Office for their efforts to hold Brown and her associates accountable for their inexcusable actions," end quote. And I do have a question about the fines, Mark. And if the fines are paid by the defendant, could that reduce at all in maybe her sentence at all, or maybe would that help at all if she was somehow able to find the money to pay back?
I doubt it will impact her sentence, but while she's on supervised release, any of them for that matter, and they would have satisfied the fines, as we spoke earlier, they could get the supervised time released because of that, showing that they're making an earnest effort to fulfill whatever their punishment was. That sometimes goes towards that. Doesn't always, but sometimes a judge will recognize that.
More and more of a crowd now gathering outside that side door at the federal courthouse. Alex Osada is standing by live now. What's the scene like now, Alex? Getting a little more busy around you, bud.
We saw Corrine Brown's daughter Chantel get into that vehicle that still parked out front of the courthouse now, in front of that door that we still expect to see Corrine Brown to walk out of at some point in the next few minutes, but did not answer any questions, just got into the vehicle, still sitting in the car right now, but not much has been said. A couple of supporters of Corrine Brown saying that the media was sort of in the way while Chantel was trying to get into her vehicle, but this is the situation right now, very quiet.
All right, you know, people,
car's still here.
There's a few times in this country where you actually see justice get served with these people. And you know, even though she got 5 years, this is a beautiful thing. Like, beautiful thing. Honestly, like 90% of the people agree with me, like this is way too light, but it's better than nothing.
Part of the sentencing, she had to give that DNA sample, and then we'll likely be able to head outside and then head home, or head maybe to her lawyer's office and not have to report till January 8th.
Despite the good deeds, and despite the the years of service that is mentioned in the sentencing order, that the judge, I guess, perhaps gave a little bit of credit for. I mean, but still, nonetheless, 5 years. There was this overriding theme that we saw the statement from the FBI just a second ago, that using a charity to help kids and taking advantage of donors is kind of this underlying theme, the most egregious part of it all. And even the judge himself saying this in part of the statement, is operated as a criminal enterprise, utilizing a charity supposed to help children, but doing none of that, I think speaks volumes to why she's now, convicted of this and going to be facing this. I mean, nonetheless, still a very stiff penalty. You're going to prison.
Right. No, without question. And you're right. The judge spent a good amount of time talking about those good deeds, but then also came around and said that holding the public office enabled her to commit these offenses, and that was one of the more troubling aspects, if not the most troubling aspect of it as well as her claims. We focused a lot on the fraud, but on the false tax returns, the judge noted that she even part of the falsity of those tax returns was she was making claims for deductions to actually donating money to that very charity.
It's almost double dipping.
God, like who does that?
And also not having to pay any taxes on it. Would you be liable? So income is income, whether it's illegal income or not. I mean, I'm guessing you are still liable for income taken, whether it's from a bogus charity or from gambling or whatever it may be. So if she's come across $500,000, whether it's through a slush fund or not, you still have to get the tax man involved, don't you? And I'm sure that's what a lot of that's involved.
It looks like most of the charges in this related to the tax returns were for falsely claiming to have donated or claiming excessive donations when there really was only a very minimal amount.
And talk to me about this FBI statement, this sentencing. What do you think, and I'd love for both of y'all to weigh in on this, what do you think is the message that it sends to others who are in power? What do you think that message is that the judge and the FBI are trying to get across to others in power who may be thinking about doing the same thing or engaged in a similar type of scheme?
Well, from an investigator or law enforcement perspective, when you put that kind of statement out, it tells people, especially public officials going forward, hey, if you engage in this type of activity, we are going to investigate it. We are going to get to the bottom of it. I mean, this wasn't the first time this has happened with with a public official. It's probably not going to be the last.
He was about to say Republican.
Put everybody on notice who's in the public eye. Hey, we will investigate you. You're not beyond reproach. You're not better than anybody else.
Democrat there, buddy.
You're subject to the laws of the land just like anybody else is. And when we start investigating you, we're going to investigate it to the fullest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your take.
Yeah, this comes back to that general deterrence argument that we talked about before that was heavily focused on by the government and that the court spends a fair amount of time talking about, that very need to ensure that there's a message sent to public officials that this trust that we've put in them as an elected official, when it's abused and misused, there's going to be a consequence for it.
And again, we're just going to probably take a moment to just kind of reset here for those of you just joining us. Carla Wiley has been sentenced to 21 months. Ronnie Simmons, who was Congresswoman Corrine Brown's chief of staff for quite some time, sentenced to 4 years, and then Congresswoman Corrine Brown herself sentenced to 5 years, and I believe then 3 years on a kind of a supervised release situation.
And all this pending as well, I mean, and they've already said there will be appeals coming. Right now, she wouldn't have to report to prison until the 8th of January, no earlier than the 8th of January, so she has about a month till she would have to report, and that is dependent upon, we know her attorneys will most likely ask for the ability to keep her out of prison until all the appeals are actually settled, how long could that take?
Well, we did expect that was going to happen, and,
sure.
and the court confirmed it, or the lawyer confirmed it a few moments ago, when he told the court that that's what he intended to do. So the interesting thing was whether that was going to occur today or whether that was going to be argued at a point before or nearer to January 8th.
So let's see, and the requirement for that is?
So in order to make that determination, the court has to find that the person's, number one, not a flight risk. They're not going to flee the country. Number two, they're not going to commit another crime if they're released. And number three, and I think the most significant one in this case, is whether or not there's a substantial question for the appeal to be decided.
Take a pause. We're right back.
First Coast